Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 4, Episode 2 of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So it does seem like this, based on this episode, what we got, and maybe I would assume it would continue, is that we are going to bounce back a little bit here and there to kind of 2 years ago to kind of like represent everything over that time skip. Well, I say 2 years, but it has been like, no, I think those were, yeah, it's been 2 years. I don't know why I keep like adjusting that in my head. Either way, we're going to bounce back and forth with that during that time skip to pick up on little story elements to understand why we got to where we are to some extent. Like, for example, the Zeke and Michaela thing, that was a conversation at the end of season 3, but now it's continuing on. Because that's why Michaela avoided being around Jared, because it's like, right, considering what he said about like, hey, he was supposed to be dead, you know, it's like, right, I was kind of fine with everything because, hey, you can love him for now, but eventually it's just going to be you and me again because he will die. And it's like, he shouldn't be here anymore. So it's like, that is an effed up thing to say about her husband. And feeling the way she feels about Jared and the way he feels about her, it's not right for us to still be in each other's lives. So, but for Jarrett, it's like, I don't regret anything that I've done. Like, if it was in the long run, like, you know, I don't regret any of it, like what we've had and stuff like that. So, which we do have, you know, jumping ahead a little bit, the whole him and Drea thing, which I'm not too surprised by. Because I want to say season 3 kind of set up, like, because I kept being like, is that going to be a thing? They seem like they're keeping it super casual now, but that could have, I mean, that could always change because easily someone could catch some feelings. But I'm also like, yeah, because I mean, it's not like you have to tell Michaela that you and Jared are sleeping together, but it's also like they're avoiding the Michaela quote because he's like, oh, who are you talking to? She's like, she completely avoided the whole like, oh yeah, I was talking to Michaela because it's like, yeah, it's just this is us time and I don't want to complicate that. Someone's going to catch feelings eventually. I think it'd be really cute if they did end up together, but it'd also be weird because it's like, yeah, both Michaela's ex-partners are a thing now, so the waters would get so complicated and muddied, you know. Now, the whole situation, too, when Jarrett got married, didn't he get married to one of Michaela's friends? Wasn't that who he was married to in that 5-year time skip? I think so. If I remember correctly, I might be misremembering. Either way. In this episode, Sanvi also got to run into Ben. I guess it's the first time they've been around each other in a very, very long time. And she's like, hey, find out. I love that. It was so cute. I love Sanvi so much when she was like, okay, you guys will never guess. Oh, no, try. Well, you know what? Never mind. You're never going to be able to guess. And they're like, she's like, never mind. I'm just going to tell you. I'm like, I love her so much. She's so adorable. But the fact is that she was like, let me talk to Ben. What Cal tried to warn her, like, hey, you haven't seen my dad in a while. He's in a really bad place. And she's like, don't worry. Like, your dad's always cared about the passengers. So I'm going to bring him some crucial information about the black box and everything. And she was going to play it for him. He's like, no, I believe you. Like, he was interested for a second, but finding Eden takes precedence. So, but for her, it's like a reminder, we have 18 months until the death date, but he doesn't care. It's like Eden is all that matters right now. And for Sanvi, it's like Ben, who has always been the one pushing this callings forward more and more, now he's kind of like shirking that responsibility. Like, he's always been at the forefront of figuring that he was the one that deep dived into this mystery. He's the one that's always, you know, pushed it forward. And for him, and I think that's the sad thing about it, him taking a backseat to all of this, kind of putting on others to like lead the charge when it's kind of been, I think that's kind of been his main calling, in fact, you know. And he said that line, that gut-wrenching line of, the callings took everything from me. And almost like, and Cal's there, they hear that. And even Ben realizes, like, on some level, he recognizes how effed up it is to say that. But it's like, yeah, yes, you lost Grace, but you still have your dad, your 2 other children, your sister, you have Zeke, you have an entire foundation of people that love and care about you, including Sanvi. It's like, you know, they are kind of a unified family of like 828ers. Like, you know, we were strangers and we became connected through all this. And so everyone cares about him, but he acts like he has nothing left. The callings took everything from him. It's like, no, you still have plenty left, but he can't let go. Understandably so. But to say that in front of your own child, to the point Zeke was like, right, like, I feel how angry you are, and it's towards Cal. He's like, no, it's not towards Cal. It's like, I don't need empath abilities to know Cal feels that way. Because even Cal's like, you can't even look me in the eyes anymore. Because he's like, yeah, it is. Because he was talking to Michaela and Zombie. He was like, yes, it is my fault that everything with Angelina, Mom's death, and Eden being taken, he has a lot of self-hate in that regard, and his dad, and Ben's so caught up in his grief that he's not taking time to be like, right, like, I'm sure Olive had to go through all that alone. Like, once again, her and Cal are in a good enough place, but truth be told is, we've seen them have one interaction present day, and that was a breakfast scene, like, last episode, so I think Olive kind of, and I think maybe that's something we'll see as the season progresses, like her kind of finding her way to, letting go of her anger towards Cal, but Ben hasn't. He probably thinks like, no, it's not directed, but it's like, he still does little things where he was telling, like when Cal was leaving, he was like, make sure you take your coat, and he almost called himself because it was almost like, because he's so used to saying that, because it's like, right, like to him, Cal's still that little boy. And it's like, no, he's not the same kid anymore. He's older, so I think a little bit of that, like, still kicked in a little bit. Because in his mind, Cal always, I think it's also hard to adjust for the fact is Cal's older now. Because once again, I think he was like 5 years older, but like he's got to be like 17 or 18 now or something like that. I'm assuming like, because Olive's got to be like, wasn't she going to college or something like that? So they have to be about the same age now because of the time skips and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, because he caught up. Yeah, he was already, because I forget, like, there was already like a time skip in between, I think season 1 and season 2, and maybe even season 2 to 3. So I think there was already time skips in that regard. So he probably is, like, him and Olive are probably the exact same age. He finally caught up to where he was supposed to be before the 5-year, like, skip because of, vanishing on the 828. Either way. So I think it's just like, right, he still sees him as that little boy, and seeing him as an adult, it's almost like, right, you don't have this recognizable face anymore. I don't know you anymore. So I think that also helps / hurts with the whole, like, why he doesn't fully connect with Cal anymore, because he has his own feelings that he hasn't sorted out, and he doesn't realize what his son is still dealing with, all the trauma, all the pain, all the self-hate for it. And once again, I don't know if him and Oliver fully where they were before, but they're a good enough space, but I think they'll probably get in an even better place going forward. So, and I think the flashbacks could really probably touch on like where things were, because Olive was understandably upset with him, but I'm sure they got to focus on how they got to where they are right now, and once again, progress and be even better. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. But yeah, circling back really quickly, Zeke is talking to Ben, and he says this poignant line of, you can have enough room in your heart. Like, it's you loving your family, like keep holding tight to your family doesn't mean you love and hold on to Eden any less. But it's like your heart's big enough to love multiple people. And he kind of thought about that when it came to the Michaela thing, because it's the whole like he talked to her like at the reception or whatever, and was like, hey. Because she's like, she admits that she still loves Jarrett, and she's like, eventually it'll go away. Like, yes, like, I will pick you, even if you have a 1 day left or 10,000 days left, I will pick you because you're who I've chosen, and my feelings will fade. So, because he's thinking like, right, I should have never came out of that cave. You and Jarrett were kind of meant to be, and, that's just how it is. So, but at the end, he found his answer because of that conversation. He tells Michaela, it's like, okay, the fact is you have a heart big enough to love everyone. You have a heart big enough that anyone should consider themselves lucky if they're loved by you. So he's like, I choose you, Michaela. There's a conversation of, she said like, right, she doesn't want kids, and she's like, the white picket fence kids, is that what you want? He's like, no, like, I want things as they are. I don't want things to change. I'm like, who knows? You never know what the future holds, like whether that conversation will change for him or not. So, but I think that was kind of that's what I'm saying, like, what happened with Michaela and Zeke this episode, I could definitely see that happening with, like, kind of how they handle, like, Olive and Cal going forward, maybe even Cal and Ben, but I think that's going to be interesting. Either way, I'm still not fully sold on the whole, just because there's a Drea and Jarrett thing. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, he's been in relationships with someone else, and then it turned, let's not forget the last relationship he was in was with the Major's daughter, so Jesus, so there's always that. So, which, speaking of the Major, Ben goes to, what was his name? Aaron Glover's, like, podcast again, his radio show, just for the purposes of trying to reach out about, Angelina and everything. But then, home dude asked a poignant question. He's like, what about your son? He's like, Ben's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, that night was also the night your son disappeared. And it's like, he's like, no, my son, he ran away, he made his choice, and it's like, because now that, also on the record, it makes you sound like such a callous asshole, that you're like, yeah, my son ran away, he made his choice. It's like, especially considering how young your son was, like, that makes you seem like such a dick. You know, I'm sure that's not going to help, but he can't admit, like, yeah, my son came back, he just came back like 5 years older, so you can't really say that. You don't want people, because even he brought up, like, yeah, wasn't your son considered by the major, Holy Grail, like, who's to say some government facility, didn't grab him up too, and it's just like, no, my son ran away, that way people won't be, like, looking for him, but it's like, it still makes you, like, having... We know the truth. Anyone on the outside, it just makes you seem like such a dick. It's like, oh, you don't care about your son that ran away, but you care about your... I get it, your daughter was kidnapped after your wife was murdered, but geez, you don't even care about your son that ran away. It's like, you have another child to be worried. You know, so it doesn't paint him in the best picture, so I could see that kind of blowing back up in Ben's face later on down the road, but we'll see. I didn't talk about it earlier when I brought up Drea, but I do like that she is very ride or die with Mick. I mean, ever since she found out about everything, she's been by Mick's side. It's just kind of like, it's just like, Jared. I mean, obviously, like, there's the complicated thing of, like, well, he has feelings for her, so, like, he would kind of go out of his way to help her. But, you know, she has a trustworthy ally like Drea to help out, so... And the fact is, Drea pointed her towards the bench, which was kind of Michaela and Jared's bench, but, like, he picked a spot where no one would see them together, because, yeah, I'm a cop, I shouldn't have to, shouldn't be caught with an 828er, because that's going to be an issue. I wonder if their captain going to pop up this season or not. The one that they had, wasn't she their captain last season? I don't think she was their captain in season 2. It might have just been last season. Either way, there is this, interesting thing about we getting to see how the registry works. It's like, cool, you get called in. It's only supposed to be like, wasn't it like once a month or something like that? But like Michaela got called in multiple times because it's like, oh, someone that fits your description, because that guy got a good look because he saw the 828 on Henry's arm. He's like, yo, what's this all about? So when the cops came asking questions, because they're also working with the Chinese government to try and find Henry, when that was all said and done, like when you're seeing like how like, oh, they're questioning you over and over again. Have you had any visions? Have you, blah, 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 so on and so forth, you know? And as I do have an explanation for all this, he's like, I have one, you just refuse to listen to my explanation, because Adrian's coming at it from, like, the religious standpoint, but it's like, yeah, you won't listen to that, so, which we'll talk about Adrian in a second. But, yeah. But, really quickly, circling back a little bit, Henry, was helping out Sanvi figure out, like, the black box situation, that he was saying that being able to lower his breath, he has this, like, very specific scar on his arm from being struck by lightning. And people will tell you, like, if you've never seen that, that is a real phenomenon. It's like, it's jacked up to say, but getting struck by lightning gives you the sickest permanent tattoo. It's a very sick design on your body if you get struck by lightning and survive. I mean, the chances of that are probably like very low, but it's like, yo, which once again, it's kind of effed up to say, but you get like a sick tattoo, and he's like, yeah, mine looks like a dragon. And so he's able to meditate and focus on the black box, and he was able to hear humming, like multiple voices in the humming. But at first Sanvi couldn't, but talking to Cooper later on, she's like, okay, so what is this? And so she focuses on it, because he's like, right, basically this, you aren't causing an earthquake with this, but the particular waves that are being emitted are waves that only come about when an earthquake happens. So it's like, why is that happening? So that might tie into Henry and Cal's calling, but we'll get to that in a second. Sanvi ends up kind of focusing on it, and she hears the voices, and she's hearing like Michaela and Ben and Cal's, and you're like, oh my god, the callings, because what have they always said? The callings have always, because that's such an interesting thing, because previously the callings were their own voices. It doesn't happen as much anymore, because usually it's like, especially like, it was a bigger thing in season 1, and they pulled away from it in like season 2 going forward, because it's usually more a visual thing, like a representation of like, oh, here's something, but it's like in the first season they leaned into like it being your own voice. Now it's like, okay, so they are in fact sending themselves to callings. It's like it might be like almost like a deja vu thing of, you know exactly what's going to happen. It's already like intertwined in your brain. Some version of you is sending you this information. It's like maybe on some level your memory, it's like maybe it's like deep-seated, like something is triggering these deep-seated memories. Like if you've seen like La Brea, spoilers for La Brea, there's everything with Gavin. He finds out what those visions are. In actuality, they're memories. So what if it's kind of a similar thing? But it could be something of that vein, or it could just be like hey, in that moment those 5 years you were gone, the 5 years like the future was being beamed into your head of like, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. This is going to happen. This is the grand scheme. This is the board the murder board. I'm using that as an example, but the murder board with the red strings everywhere. These are the callings, and these are like the future events, and it's all leading to one very specific point. All these threads are connected, and now it's like, cool. Now that version of you is sending you these messages at some point in time. Like there's some version of them still stuck in a perpetual state of stasis after the plane disappeared for 5 years, and they were gathering all this knowledge, and boom, you jettison to 5 years in the future, but there's still some version of you beaming that information to you. Once again, the whole conversation of whether they're copies or whatever that is still unclear. But then it could just be, once again, like I said, the information is just there. It's just slowly, subconsciously coming out. But because it's always been there in their brain, manifesting itself as callings. I don't know. But that's interesting to know that all the voices Henry was hearing has been their voices saying all the stuff that they heard during their callings, earlier on. So we'll have to wait and see but that's very, very interesting. So, sadly, Henry ended up getting arrested because he wanted to make sure. I feel like that timing was too interesting. Like, the fact is that Michaela's trying to run with Henry, and in that moment, a garbage truck it just could be the worst timing in the world, and they just happen to move after the fact, and I'm like, and they let her pass. I'm like, there's no way that had to be done on purpose. Like, I think later on we're going to find out whoever that was. They never went to the purpose of showing who that person was. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it makes me suspicious thinking like the fact that they hid that person's face means like that was done on purpose. We might be dealing with some time shenanigans of like for example, we never just spitballing. That could be Cal, but he's turned not show his face, and it's like, right, we're trying to make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, because some timey-wiminess or something like that. Just throwing it out there. Or it could just be someone's on the other side of that helping out in their own way, like this is meant to be. I don't know. That's my thinking. I could easily be 100% wrong, and I'm just like, yeah, that could just end up being, in the grand scheme of things, it was just terrible timing. But Henry surrendered himself because he wanted Michaela to get away, but also it's like, right, I've served my purpose. But like I brought up earlier, there's the whole situation with Cal and Henry having the same vision, them being on the plane again, and Cal seeing the volcano like he did last season, wasn't it? Yeah, the volcano and everything. So it's like it's still happening, and I think that's what the frequencies of like, oh, this is supposed to be like, was it ULF? Yeah, I think it's like ultra low frequencies or the U might not have been ultra. It meant something, but it was like a frequency humans can't hear. But once again, it's the thing that happens like when an earthquake happens. So I'd assume there's a correlation there. But Cal, now that he has the callings back, feels like, no, I need to do this. I need to get to Henry because it's like he's trying to give me something. And I love that he ended up almost going through the wrong door, but Drea showed up and she's like, your other left. He's like, I knew that. But Henry tells him, like, I don't need, like, I was supposed to be like, I've been having these callings of you for 2 years, and now that I've found you, I've done what I need to. Like, like, you don't have to worry about me. He's telling Henry, everything you need is inside of you. The thing is, you are, my scar is on the outside. Yours are on the inside. You are a dragon, Cal. You are strong and you can do anything. The thing is, you just have to believe. Because I think that's what probably happened for the first time in a long time. He started to believe again because he had so many doubts about himself, about everything. I think that's why he stopped. Like, he wasn't like, you know, that's why the callings weren't calling out to him. But I think it is a thing of you have to believe with all your heart, you know, call to the callings in some shape or form. And now they're finally responding to him again. You know, everything with Henry was like that's his second calling now in 2 years. And because he felt like he had lost his purpose. And in a way where it's like, Cal feels so lost right now, just like his dad does. And it's just, they're both handling it different ways. Cal is trying to help with the lifeboat situation, even though he hasn't gotten the callings. Ben is ignoring the callings to try and help find Eden. And now, like, you know, a shopkeeper or something thought they saw, Angelina, which she was at the library, and Eden did leave a picture with her, which I feel like that might turn into an important story point. Like, 'cause we never got to see what was actually on the picture she gave that librarian. So, but Zeke and Ben went to the place. Turns out it's fairly close to where Anna lives. It's like literally across the street. It's like, oh, she's got some security cameras. It's like, oh yeah, they don't work. They're just for show. But sadly, the wrong person to lie around, because Zeke's like, you're lying. You're feeling guilty about something. And I was like, thank you for finally giving me the answer. Because I was asking last episode, I'm like, why would you support Angelina considering she murdered a lady and like, kidnapped a child? Because Angelina lied through her teeth. She manipulated Anna. Because Anna's like, right, I thought about what I would do, you know, what I would go through just to protect my nephews. Well, it turns out Angelina was saying like, oh my God, I had to do what I had to do. I had to save Eden from them. I said Eden from them because Ben and Grace were so terrible. I'm like, wow, you are really like, oh, you sucked before, you suck major time this time, even more so, because like you murdered a lady and you're besmirching Grace's good name as a mother. It's like, how low can you go, Angelina? But it's like, that's so messed up. And Anna regrets what she did. But Ben did see the pictures on the, and I'm sure for him, it's like, wow, if I had like been listening to the callings, I probably would have been a lot even closer to Eden than where I am now. I think in that moment, Ben did let go of some of that grief, because obviously Zeke could feel it because it was so overpowering, and it is a lot for one person to hold. But now he feels happy. He's working with, you know, Olive and telling Michaela and their dad about, yeah, she's okay. And then him and Kyle look at each other, and I think Ben realizes like what Zeke had said to him previously, and now that, oh, like he like, it's one thing to want to believe that Eden's alive. Now he knows for sure that she's alive. That gives you extra strength, but I think it will make him kind of reevaluate the way he's been treating Cal the past 2 years. Hopefully it does. We'll see. Maybe this whole situation, you know, it's like, it's going to be sad where it's like, right, you now know that Eden's alive, and oh, that's going to make it, you're going to not look at Cal with such hatred as much, but it's still like, does it make up for the 2 years you've looked at him? Like, I think Ben's going to have to really come to terms with the way he acted and the way he treated Cal in that time, so. But, Angelina and Eden end up moving into a place, and I was like, yeah, it's interesting that this place is specifically, say like, oh, you could stay here if you're an 828er. I was like, that's suspicious as hell. I was like, if you were an 828er, I'd feel better about it, but it turns out the lady's like, oh no, like, maybe she's going to keep Angelina there, because it's like, oh, what do you guys think? Because it's like, yeah, well, are you running for something? She's like, well, you know, people don't think we're humans. She's like, well, what are you? She's like, I don't know. I was like, well, I guess we'll just have to find out, and locked her in a room. Luckily, Adrian had a calling the moment he arrived at the place, because I wasn't paying attention to when, I don't think they showed when Angelina arrived what the place was called. They probably did on the website, I just wasn't paying attention. But the moment he got there, I was like, it's where Angelina and Eden are. So he busted them out. But even he's still like, you did what you did. But she's like, yeah, you told me to go my guardian angel. I didn't tell you to kidnap a kid and kill someone. It's like, Grace would have never let her go. Plus, she's kept me safe and yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. It's like, no one wants to hear your craziness. Once again, maybe her upbringing of just like her extremely, and I use the term strongly, extremely religious family, like borderline crazy, extremely religious family that ended up doing what they did to her, and it caused a lot of psychological damage. And that's, she's a byproduct of her own upbringing, and coming back as she was, and her family, because everyone handles everyone return, because not everyone's lucky like the Stones. It's like, yeah, their dad welcomed them back with open arms, didn't think like, oh, anything of it. Jarrett was kind of like, oh, like there's some people who just rationally like, oh, I don't think you're like aliens or monsters or demons or something, but there are people who did, like Angelina's parents, for example, plus a lot of 828 haters and stuff like that. So, which feels so weird, like, oh, you're an 828 hater. It's like, I mean, it goes to deep-seated hatred of, like, they want to kill you, want to lock you up, obviously want to go through a full registry situation. But Adrian's not too keen on the whole helping Angelina thing, but I think he's helping just because of Eden. He's like, right, I shelter 828ers. It's like, I'm curious if anyone's going to recognize her face if she goes there, so that's definitely going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.